Uh, okay, so thank you. So I have 20 minutes to make a brief introduction because I'm sure afterwards my colleagues will go more into detail, especially on some parts of the work plan. This work plan, in fact, include 20 activities that I have discussed with the colleagues, and at the end of the day, we retain 20 activities. Uh, it started in 2007, and when I was first elected CHMP chair, and it will be closed in principle 2013. So this one will include the period between 2010 2013. So 20 activities which are fully in line with the EMA roadmap and the document, very structured document, by the way, which has been worked on by EMER, which is the document From Vision to Reality. For each of these 20 activities, sponsors from CHMP and EMA, and as for every activity, the concept paper, which is called a briefing note, deliverable, and the date of the deliverable, and the priority. Some of them are high priority, you will see which ones. Others are probably less, either medium or low priority. The first one, which is a high priority, is the review and learning project on risk management plan. That's a work which has started in 2007 with Ingemar Persson as chair or as rapporteur, if I can say so, or as a sponsor. And now it's Bert Löfkens doing the job. It was essentially aimed at evaluating the process, the contents, the quality of the EU RMPs, and the best practice for handling the RMPs. In other words, to assess the work which has been done regarding the RMPs and to see if the work is useful. So it starts with analyzing a full and complete comprehensive analysis of 6 recent RMPs, some of them coming from referrals, some of them coming from the centralized procedure, and assess first the building of the RMP, that is the initiation of the protocol and the discussion within the CHMP, the implementation being how is it feasible, and also we address the national struggles, because there were national struggles afterwards. And finally, the delivery phase. The delivery phase, in other words, what is the added value of this RMP? Again, without entering too much into detail, the brief conclusion is that there are some opportunities for improvement with these RMPs. There are most of them far off being optimal. By the way, most of the regulatory action which have been taken based on the 6 recent RMPs have been taken outside of the RMP, which means that maybe the RMP was not sufficiently focused on or something like that. In brief, we decided to, as next step, to restart an analysis which will be also prospective, which will be first retrospective and afterwards being prospective, knowing that we will have obviously in 2012 the new pharmaceutical legislation, which will change obviously the way we are conducting RMP. Another issue which is important is the signal detection. So you know that signal detection is important in the field of pharmacovigilance and in the field of the new pharmacovigilance legislation, but here we are focusing essentially on the relationship between the EMA and EUDRA Vigilance, by the way, and the rapporteurs for each of the centralized each of the centrally authorized product, and the sponsor is Raif Survana, and for the CHMP, and Ana Hidalgo for the EMA. And the background, as it is stated in this slide, is to improve and facilitate the handling of the pharmacovigilance signals, obviously concentrating on interaction between EMA, EUDRA Vigilance, and the rapporteurs. And we are doing we are making 3 proposals. First, to improve the template, which will make the rapporteurs more aware of the situation, and especially the urgency of the situation, if it's urgent. A flow chart, which will detail, define, describe better the interaction between the EMA and the rapporteurs and his assessment team. And finally, we intend to circulate every month a table or spreadsheet of the signals to the CHMP exactly the same way as it will be done for the PRAC. The second issue, which is a high priority, obviously, is the interaction with the PRAC. First, I made a very rapid calculation. 30% of the CHMP agenda today will go to the PRAC. So that's the first point, and it will give you the importance of the PRAC, of the importance of the PRAC as it has been provided by the pharmaceutical legislation. The second issue is that the CHMP will be obviously involved in the centrally authorized products, approval of risk management system, although the PRAC will remain in the driving seat, monitoring effectiveness as well, the different list of products subject to additional monitoring, the PSURs, which will become, in fact, periodic safety, efficacy, and safety. So it will be benefit and risk, efficacy and safety. Same is true, by the way, for the risk management plan, which will become a benefit and risk management plan. All the Article 20 and Article 107, where we will be obviously involved, not all of them, but at least those interesting the centrally authorized product. The appointment of rapporteurs is something that we currently not totally settled down, but there is a suggestion, which makes sense, that the PRAC rapporteur would come from the member state of the CHMP rapporteur, which again makes sense. This PRAC rapporteur would be appointed at the time of the initial CHMP rapporteur, that is when the dossier is submitted. And obviously, and it is clearly mentioned in the pharmaceutical legislation, there will be a need to have a close cooperation between both committees. The timing could be an obstacle. The timing, the pharmaceutical legislation asks us 60 days. But in 60 days for the PRAC to give its view, to give its recommendation to the CHMP. 60 days for the time being without any clock stop. And for the CHMP, very few days to react. I think at least 30 days, but certainly not more. The timing to get the same, I would say, opinion from the two committees could be an obstacle. It was last month an obstacle for the CAT and the CHMP for a product which is called Glybera. You probably are aware of that. So the timing was an obstacle. The timing here could be also an obstacle in the future. Finally, the post-authorization efficacy and safety study. That remains, we discussed last week or 2 weeks ago with Ian Hudson. It remains for me a kind of mystery. I'm sure that it will be a condition of the marketing authorization at the time of approval. It's written down in the legislation. It will be also part of the RMP. But my question is, which type of situation will give rise to a post-authorization efficacy and safety study? Will it be a situation where external validity of the data present clear uncertainties at the time of the marketing authorization? Maybe. Or in the post-marketing authorization stage where concerns are identified. That won't take too much of a problem, I think. The major problem will be at the time of approval, or the major question may not be a problem. At the time of approval, what are we going to do as far as the post-authorization efficacy studies are concerned? To me, and it's totally personal, first, I don't think there will be many requests of post-authorization effectiveness or efficacy study. But I think the most important issue will allow this post-authorization efficacy study to make a bridge between the pre and the post-marketing authorization stage, and maybe a bridge between the EMA, CHMP, and those acting beyond the marketing authorization. That's something which potentially could make sense. I'm not totally sure, even sure at all, by the way, that the Commission will follow that, but at the very least, that would make sense. In terms of quality, rapidly on the falsified medicinal products, the impact on CHMP, only provision for safety feature having a direct impact on products, essentially in terms of packaging. That's Jean-Louis Robert, my friend Jean-Louis Robert, who is in charge of that. I think more important is the parallel assessment of quality by design applications. You know, I'm not an expert in quality by design application or quality by design, but I think the strategy which is led here is important. That is to ensure consistent implementation in the evaluation process of ICH Q8, Q9, Q10 between the European and the Food and Drug Administration, the Japanese being observer. So there will be some lesson learned from this parallel assessment or joint assessment, which will have to be communicated to all stakeholders, including the pharmaceutical industry. For the time being, there is one application, which is currently being assessed by the rapporteur and co-rapporteur, and I can't tell you any more about that, but that's something which is probably important. I won't dwell on the new methodologies to assess the benefit-risk balance. There were 5 work packages. We are currently at work package 4. And the real problem, it's not a problem, the real issue is where are we going to go? Where are we going to go? Are we going to remain qualitative? Maybe by improving the qualitative aspect of the assessment report and of the benefit-risk balance, or are we going to introduce some quantitative aspects of the assessment of the benefit-risk balance? And that's something that we are currently discussing. I don't want, again, to dwell on that. You will have a specific session on that. In terms of monitoring and of new working parties and SAGs, as you know, there are new therapeutic working parties which replace the efficacy working parties. So every working party according to the therapeutic field, cardiovascular, central nervous system, and so on and so forth. And we have also a new guideline consistency group, and I have to say I welcome this new consistency group. The chairman is Dr. Hudson. I welcome that because it will give us something that we were more or less losing, which is a kind of consistency between our different guidelines, especially when they are built up by different people in different silos. And this consistency group will make the bridge between the different guidelines, and I think that's a good point. The participation of civil society in the SAGs, we will have, I think, in December, but again, Isabelle will come back on that, 1-year pilot phase for patient participation in the SAG meetings. As far as I can see, the SAG persons, the regulators, and the patients are interested, and I think we will pursue that. The international activities will be addressed by Emer. I would like to essentially mention the clusters, i.e. the oncology cluster, the pharmacogenetics, and by the way, it's not i.e., it's e.g., because there are many clusters which are, but these one, oncology and pharmacogenetics, they are the one where I'm, I would say, mostly acquainted with. So discussion between EMA and FDA assessors. We will have next week or the week after in the field of pharmacogenetic a discussion with the Food and Drug Administration on a specific product intended to treat cystic fibrosis, so it's an important issue. So that works well, and one of the sponsors, Harald Densman, is working on a rationale which could explain the divergent decision taken by the agencies around the world. Some new projects promoting new methodologies in drug development, there are some reflection on modeling simulation, adaptive design. So modeling simulation essentially during the exploratory phase of the drug development, adaptive design in the exploratory phase and the confirmatory phase. The leading person is Rob Hemmings from the MHRA. I know that the MHRA, we discussed that just earlier on with IN, has I would say, an important project in this topic, and Rob Hemmings being the chair of the Scientific Advice Working Party at the EMA that will make the bridge. In brief, I think it's important again and again to remind the audience the utility of the briefing meetings, these briefing meetings, which are kind of scientific advice, but not formal, totally informal. We have briefing meetings in pharmacogenetics and genomics, which work well. We could have briefing meetings also on new methodologies in drug development, and that would be a very good occasion to discuss with the pharmaceutical industry. And finally, joins SOAP HCA scientific advice. Bon, I will not dwell on that. Again, it will be addressed later on. There are some procedures which in fact will incorporate the different stakeholders, some procedures. I have attended personally 2 or 3 of these procedures. The scientific discussion is, I would say, unfortunately not too controversial, but that's something which may improve in the future. Finally, very rapidly, because I am running out of time, the other project, we have an SMPC advisory group whose aim is to give some advice and to commence the SMPC again in the field of consistency for centrally authorized products which have been just granted a positive opinion from the CHMP. We have also an interesting topic on generics, how to handle generics both at CHMP and CMDH, and trying to keep the consistency, which is also important, to identify the difficulties of in the assessment of some specific generics, and we have a procedure for that, and also a RRMP for generics. I don't have time to dwell on that, but I think it will make a perfect transition between what we are doing today and what will be done in 2012 when the new pharmaceutical legislation comes into force. The geriatrics, I will not again insist on that since Emmer has discussed in her talk. And finally, the GCP inspection will be addressed by Jens Ensterberg. The non-prescription medicinal product, it's also a topic. For the time being, you all know that it doesn't work well at the level of the CHMP. The companies are, and we can understand that, reluctant to seek eligibility to centralized procedures, and we are trying to discuss and to think how we could improve that, but I have to say that for the time being it's a little bit difficult. And finally, the revision of pandemic preparedness plan. It is an immense work which has been done following the H1N1 period 2 years ago, which has been done by the EMA essentially, but I will not again discuss that because it's, for the time being, obviously it's closed. If in the future we have a new pandemic, we will obviously take advantage of the one that happened 2 years ago. And finally, more details, as I told you, during this TOPRA meeting with Isabelle on the patient involvement, Jens, GCP, the international activities, EMER, the benefit risk with Xavier Luria, and the EMA-HTA interface with Spiro Ramvakas. I thank you for your attention.